But speaking of quitting, the big thing Albanese should have done over the break, halfway through his term, is replace some of the big failures in his government. Get in some fresh talent from the backbench. Most obviously, of course, get rid of Indigenous Australians Minister Linda Burney. Get her to resign because she said she had bad health anyway. And she was completely hopeless at selling the voice. Couldn't answer any questions without reading cheat sheets. And now that the voice is dead, ask, has Burney come up with a single fresh idea, for instance, to tackle the violence that's now exploded again in Alice Springs and Wadeye? And here's another minister who should have at least been shuffled sideways. Climate Change Minister, Energy Minister Chris Bowen, who has since been, it's been for years now, blindly leading a religious crusade to shut down our coal-fired power stations and switch us to renewables like wind and solar instead. Just last Friday, there was Bowen tweeting again about how great Britain was doing with wind power, forgetting to add that people there have had to pay even more for their electricity. And I was thinking of Bowen last week, you see, when I was driving halfway across Victoria on a road trip with my daughter through areas that today face flood warnings. I couldn't believe even then how green the state was. So green in January, when the Bureau of Meteorology had warned us in September that the La Nina would dry up the rains. When global warming guru Tim Flannery, hired by the Gillard Labor government as our climate commissioner, told us in 2007 that global warming would actually mean less water.
Even the rain that falls isn't actually going to fill our dams and our river system.
But what really got me about Bowen as I was driving there through the country was that so many wind farms, you can see them now, left, right, are built on hills and rises, turning our magnificent countryside, get away from it all, into a wind farm industrial zone. And you get the same thing in South Australia, in Tasmania too, everywhere, New South Wales, West Australia, and even near the rainforests of Queensland. How can we vandalise our countryside like this? But the worst of it is that under Bowen's global warming plans, we're going to need about 9 times more wind farms by 2050 than we have even today. Every wind tower you see, multiply them. Imagine 9 more on the hills around you. But I said to praise one Albanese government minister, and let me end with this. Environment Minister Tanya Plibersek. She has said no today to a plan to build a huge new facility to build offshore wind farms. She said it would hurt wetlands in the area, and it sure would. I would know, because the site of this planned monstrosity is in Hastings, on Victoria's Western Port Bay. I live not far from that. And the thought of our quiet bay, Phillip Island on it as well, being turned into another green industrial zone for extremes like Bowen, give me a break. In fact, there are extra points to Plibersek because this wind farm facility was wanted by a wind farm company called Star of the South. That is 10% owned by the Cbus Union Super Fund. And who's chairman of that? Labor President and former Treasurer Wayne Swan. But his of Labor's right, Plibersek is of Labor's left. I think there's going to be some hard words behind the scenes. And of course, this means Bowen's rollout of wind farms and solar farms, is of the right too, is now in even more trouble. It's so far behind already, it's a joke. If only the Prime Minister replaced Chris Bowen with someone less manic and less obsessed with global warming, what a great start to the year that would have been. But as it is, stand by. We've got some fighting to do.